Hi everyone, Chris of the Polish Geek welcomes you to another movie review, a review of Mortal Kombat 2. And what did I think of the movie? Well, let's get out one thing of the way first, that it is, as everyone says, it is indeed an improvement over the first movie. But before we get more to it, I will tell you also a little bit about my experience with Mortal Kombat games and what do I think of them. I like them. I do think they are quite fun fighting games. I really love the fatalities, and actually I prefer the older Mortal Kombat games because I just love that live action style of those live action characters on the screen fighting each other. Yeah, this is pretty cool actually. I've seen lots of people saying it aged badly, but no, I disagree. I still think it's actually wicked cool and creative, so yeah, I actually like that live action sprites basically pasted onto the screen fighting. I find it really cool. I really like it, so yes. Although, that being said, I never almost get very far in the old Mortal Kombat games. They're so ridiculously difficult. I've always been much better at Tekken, actually. And would I prefer Mortal Kombat or Tekken? Well, Tekken is more nostalgic, certainly, but at the same time, Mortal Kombat has fatalities, as well as, again, this really cool style of live-action sprites, and I think also cooler character designs, but ultimately, let's just say, I do like Mortal Kombat and Tekken, but neither of them are my go-to play video games. Again, they're fun fighting games to play occasionally, but that's pretty much it. And once again, as I just said, I never get that far in Mortal Kombat fighting anyway, sadly. It's that difficult, but okay, what did I think of the movie? Because we went on a tangent a little bit. Well, as I said, I think it's an improvement over the first Mortal Kombat from 2021, but I still won't go as far as to say it's a great movie, like everyone seems to be praising it. But then again, I think it may be because I'm not such a huge fan of the video games. As I said, I do like them, but I don't consider myself like a huge fan or anything. But I think fans of video games might actually like that, because the character of Cole Young, which was the biggest issue of a lot of people for the first movie, is very much sidelined, which lots of fans didn't like him because that's a character that's not in the video game, so understandably nobody gave shit about him really, but thankfully the creators very much rectified that mistake and basically sidelined him and gave much more focus to Johnny Cage, who's actually pretty cool, and I think he's the best part of the movie. He's really funny and he's catchy one-liners, and I really like how he's basically this, well, the trailers basically presented as basically this old school hero from the 90s or 80s who basically pokes fun at all the modern trends and all. Yeah, that was really cool and I really like that part. Although, it also creates some of the problems that we'll get to soon actually. And another thing I'll give a credit, the fighting is also really cool and the fatalities and all. And I really love the design of Shao Kahn. It was so much better than his pretty lame design in Mortal Kombat Annihilation actually. Yeah, the design of Shao Kahn was really incredible and he looked badass and his mask was really cool. Yep. Johnny Cage is pretty cool, as was Shao Kahn, and the fighting scenes were good, as were the fatalities. So if this is purely what you want in a Mortal Kombat movie, then I say you absolutely should watch it. This is very much a movie you've been wanting, and once again, I very much do praise the creators for that, because listening to the fans and giving actually them what they deserve and want is almost non-existent these days, but thankfully I will give a credit when credit is due, and this is what I think they did a really good job at. But also I can't say the story was really that great, and the biggest problem of it was that it basically jumps all over the place. The movie gets introduced with Shao Kahn killing the parents of Kitana actually when she's only a kid, and then it's sort of supposed to be her character arc actually of fighting Shao Kahn and all that, and she technically is actually the main character of this movie and is the one that defeats Shao Kahn in the end. Yep, spoiler alert, but that's actually the problem. The movie focuses a lot more on the characters like Johnny Cage, Sonya Blade and all, and frankly I actually cared far more about them than I did about Kitana, actually. The problem is that Kitana doesn't really do much throughout most of the movie. Throughout most of the movie, it just feels like she's in the beginning as a kid, and then when Shao Kahn kills her parents and she pledges service to him, and then throughout most of the movie she just appears as his servant, and then in the end she suddenly snaps out of it, fights him and defeats him. And that's the biggest problem. Technically, she's technically the main character, but the problem is she barely does anything throughout the movie, and there is just like and the movie gives us like no justification to really care about her. In fact, by the end when she was fighting Shao Kahn, I practically forgotten about the beginning opening scene at this point, and that she was supposed to be the one to defeat him. Like I was literally convinced that Johnny Cage was going to be the one that defeats him, because again the movie focuses a lot more on him actually. And the female character that I cared a lot more than Kitana was actually Sonya Blade, but that's another thing. She was pretty cool, but she barely did anything, like other than killing Kano, which was pretty good, and then being knocked unconscious during the final fight of Shao Kahn. She barely gets anything to do, which is a real shame, because she was actually my favorite female character in the movie. But once again, it feels like the story of this movie is very much a mess and don't know where it wants to commit. On one hand, technically, officially, Kitana is officially the main character, but the problem is the movie focuses so much on Johnny Cage and all that you practically throughout most of the movie I literally felt like Johnny Cage was the main character, and all of that was basically his story and character arc. But, oh well, as I said, there are things to enjoy in this movie. And another thing I also give it credit is that some of the backgrounds and all were basically taken straight out of the video games. And there is a scene where Shao Kahn actually defeats one of the heroes actually in this like sewer with a green poison, which was in the old video games actually, and that was a pretty cool reference. And where would I say this movie ranks among other Mortal Kombat movies? Well, I say it's certainly better than its predecessor in 2021 and much better than Mortal Kombat Annihilation, but then again, that's not really the high bar to clear. Like, who likes Annihilation? But if I compare it to the very original Mortal Kombat movie from the 90s, then now this is really the toughest part. But by the way, the original Mortal Kombat movie from the 90s is actually my introduction to the Mortal Kombat franchise. Yes. Also, the iconic music, Mortal Kombat theme, ten 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 ten. Yeah, it's actually originated from that movie, even though it became a completely iconic Mortal Kombat theme. And anytime you hear it, you basically imagine yourself fist fighting, actually. But again, it actually never appears in any of the video games. Again, it originated in this 90s movie, actually. But so, if I compare this one to the 90s, well, that's once again the toughest part, because this one certainly has better fighting scenes, I say, and most importantly, it's R-rated and has all those fatalities that we very much all love from Mortal Kombat, so in that way it's certainly better. But at the same time, I do think that the 90s one has a more clear story structure. It is still pretty entertaining movie, and it's still nothing groundbreaking. It's still pretty cheesy like you'd expect from Mortal Kombat movie, but I say it has a much clearer story structure actually, and that's what I guess does make it better actually than this one. So yes, ultimately I think, while none of the Mortal Kombat movies I consider particularly great movies, but I guess the best one is still the one from the 90s. I say with this one being a close second. Again, I do think this one certainly has better fatalities, and certainly it's good and it's R-rated like a Mortal Kombat movie should be, but the reason I still prefer the original 90s movie is that I think it just has a more clear story structure, actually, and it's not a mess, it's not all over the place. And by the way, that movie was, when I just said it was my introduction to Mortal Kombat franchise, actually, I was in like my very early teens, and like 13 years old, something like that, and I remember those last days where VHS was still common, and I actually even saw it running on TV once, and even recorded it on my VHS. Kinda miss those days actually now, but yes, I still think that original 90s movie is the best Mortal Kombat movie. Again, there are several things I think this one has done better, such as the fatalities and the fight scenes and all, but once again, the original 90s movie still wins because I think it had a much clearer story structure and narrative that wasn't all over the place like it was here. So, ultimately, this is my opinion on Mortal Kombat 2. It's certainly a huge improvement over its predecessor, and I do think it had really good fighting scenes, and Johnny Cage was a really cool character, and really loved how he was basically this deconstruction of 90s hero and how he was constantly poking fun at all the modern trends and all. Really like that, actually. And fatalities were cool, and Shao Kahn looked awesome, but still, and I'm also very much praise the creators from actually listening to the fans and the feedback, actually. But ultimately, I think its biggest problem is just that it's basically all over the place and it doesn't fully know what to commit to. That's just my opinion on Mortal Kombat 2. So, thank you guys for checking out this review. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you later, bye!